And prior to the flood, it was a self-supporting community. They didn't want any help from the government. They didn't get any help from the government.
Tonight, First Nations in Northern Manitoba pay the price of hydro development with eroded lands and culture.
The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls looks into the systemic issues of injustice in Canada.
So, it's kind of the first of its kind this way. It's a very, non-colonial atlas.
And National Geographic shows Indigenous peoples in a whole new light in the Inuk journalist who helped get them there. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. Amber Tuckero was just 20 years old when she disappeared near Edmonton in 2010. 2 years later, her remains were found in Leduc County, just south of the city.
Her family filed a complaint over the RCMP's handling of her case. And on Wednesday, they revealed some of the findings of the RCMP's report that showed there were deficiencies in the handling of Amber's case. APTN's Chris Stewart has the story.
Amber Tuckero was a new mother and had come to Edmonton from her home in Fort McMurray in 2010. Within a day of arriving, she had vanished. Amber's mother, Vivian, called the RCMP. Vivian Tuckero says the Leduc RCMP mishandled her daughter's case from the very beginning. It took the RCMP a month before interviewing her. She was put on and then wrongly taken off the missing persons database. 2 years later, her remains were found on a rural property in Leduc County, just south of Edmonton. Vivian Tuckero filed a complaint with the RCMP Civilian Review and Complaints Commission on the Leduc RCMP's handling of her daughter's case in 2014. 4 years later, the 120-page report was given to the Tuckero family. Amber's brother Paul and her mother Vivian spoke to the media and read some of the report.
The Commission found that the investigation into Ms. Tuckero's disappearance was deficient in that various members were either not properly trained or did not adhere to their training, and that various members did not comply with policies, procedures, and guidelines.
Acting Commanding Officer John Ferguson from the Alberta RCMP K Division spoke on behalf of RCMP Commissioner Lucky.
The RCMP is committed to immediately implementing the recommendations. The RCMP understands the urgency and importance of missing person cases. We must learn from our mistakes and continue to move forward with new policies and procedures.
The family has decided not to share the full report at this time.
This is by far the greatest and hardest thing that our family is facing, in the sense that we now have the report and know that my sister's case was mishandled from the outset.
Amber's killer has never been found.
I think the hardest thing for myself and my family is knowing that the killer is still out there. And I don't think we'll ever have any peace of mind, or, I don't know, people say closure. What is that, like, really? So, to the dirty bastard that's out there, like April was saying earlier, we are not going away, and we'll keep searching till you're caught.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls continues hearings in Quebec City. The focus is on criminal justice system this week. Danielle Rochette has more.
Renée Brassard is a professor and researcher. She started Thursday's hearings talking about the effects of colonialism on Indigenous women today.
For example, the residential schools in some communities, when we look at the poverty rates, when we look at the overcrowded housing, lack of social preventive services that are accessible, shortage of specialized services, systemic discrimination, all of this is part of social phenomenons that hurt these communities and that are from colonialism.
Brassard says the justice system still has to work on including Indigenous culture values.
Since the beginning of colonialism, that we're trying to fit a circle into a square, and after people wonder after all these years, how is it that this isn't working? Well, it's maybe because it's impossible. This is a system that still does not take into account the values, language, needs, and different ideas.
The overrepresentation of Indigenous people in prison was also part of Brassard's research.
Mais il existe aussi d'autres mécanismes, notamment la médiation sociale. Voilà, il y a des outils aussi autochtones qui actuellement ont cours et qu'on doit absolument reconnaître, leur validité, leurs effets pour guérir. Et voilà, il faut ouvrir vers une pluralité de réponses sociales plutôt que d'adresser tout systématiquement vers l'appareil de justice pénale.
Brassard feels her presence at the inquiry is one more step toward reconciliation.
Je pense que plus on multipliera ce genre d'ouverture entre les Autochtones et les non-Autochtones, plus on risque que le cours et l'avenir soient justement construits de ponts et que l'on puisse habiter ou cohabiter de manière harmonieuse.
On Friday, the Commission will hear from Hélène Gabriel, a human rights activist from Ganasatagi. Daniel Rochette, APTN National News, Quebec City.
Media in Vancouver were invited to a full-scale emergency response drill with numerous agencies eager to show how they would handle a Trans Mountain oil spill near Vancouver waters. But as APTN's Tina House reports, those opposing the pipeline still have lots of questions about that response.
This is a mock incident command post showing how numerous agencies would handle an oil spill. Media were given a tour on the ocean to see up close how an oil spill is contained.
So the scenario today was that there was a pipeline rupture up on land, and there's about 300 tons or 300,000 liters of product. About 160 of that got into Burrard Inlet, and the first and secondary containment captured about 70% of that. So we're looking at around 40 tons that actually got into Burrard Inlet that our crews are looking at recovering.
Back at the Incident Command Post, otherwise known as Unified Command, Dan Carter is with the Trans Mountain Corporation.
And of course the pipeline's there, it would flow down the hill.
He says this map shows the mock scenario. Carter says in the event of a cleanup, Indigenous nations would be a welcome partner to assist with cleanup efforts.
So the responsible party would be us, Trans Mountain. But you also, again, you have the government officials that would be part of Unified Command, and also any other parties could be Indigenous groups as well.
However, for Tsleil-Waututh Nation member Will George, he says despite their best efforts in trying to clean up an oil spill, he will continue to speak out against this project.
From what I could hear, they're skimming, and we all know that bitumen sinks to the bottom, so whatever they did yesterday was just creating an illusion, with all their boats and all their manpower. When it sinks to the bottom, we get megatons of bitumen at the bottom. We know only at best 10% can be recovered.
The federal government has provided an additional $150 million to increase marine spill response, essentially making it quicker for crews to deploy.
90% of our diet came from this body of water. These are spiritual highways. This is how we got around, and our nation, where we're located, we were never relocated. We still find artifacts on our beach, and we'll continue to protect it as our ancestors did, for sure.
Tina House, APTN National News, North Vancouver.
First Nations leaders from Manitoulin Island in Northern Ontario are appalled over a schoolyard incident at Manitoulin Secondary School last week. Community leaders, youth, and members of the Michigan First Nation held a unity march today. They're calling for an apology from the Rainbow District School Board after an hour-long schoolyard brawl broke out. This grade 12 student describes what he saw last Friday.
This all started just a little bit before lunch, and so there was the two groups of students, of course the non-Indigenous students and then the Indigenous students, and they're just throwing racial slurs back and forth, and it was getting heated up, and then the two groups came together, and it was just all the news said, it was just a giant brawl of like 50 people, and me and some of my friends were actually trying to pull some people out, mostly Indigenous students, so no one would really get in trouble.
We'll have a full story and more reaction from the rally on tomorrow's newscast.
A new project on the Blood Reserve in Alberta will bring new homes and full-time work to its members. The Kainai housing project is expected to have 25 new homes built by the end of December. Right now, there are 5,000 members living on reserve, and the current housing inventory meets the demands of only 1,400 people. Dale Murphy of Blood Tribe Housing says building the homes has also provided 45 full-time jobs.
Right now we're employing 90% of our workers are from our reserve, so it's a good feeling to be employing our people.
In Vancouver, the federal government announced $1.5 million to help Indigenous people gain literacy and employment skills. The money will be going to the Native Education College. It was established in 1967 and provides cultural supports for students. The college will start up the Essential Skills for Aboriginal Business project. It will prepare 200 people to enter the workforce and even to become entrepreneurs.
This is about supporting a program that helps Indigenous students see themselves as business owners and leaders, because that's how the conversation will change. When all of you are on the boards and the managers and the supervisors and starting businesses and leading change in this country, that's how we turn all of this around.
Time for a short break, but when we come back, part 3 of our 4-part series on the effects of hydro development on Northern Manitoba First Nations.
And a first of its kind Indigenous Atlas of Canada, but first here's tomorrow's weather.
I'm Ashley Branson. For over half a century, hydro development has culturally, economically, and socially devastated First Nations in Northern Manitoba. Now community members are showing us how the environment has been impacted. Coming soon to APTN National News.
Over on the East Coast, we've got 10 in mix of sun and cloud in St. John's, 19 mix of sun and cloud in Halifax, 5 in Inuk with some rain, 12 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay and sunshine, lots of 17, Chibougamau, Saguenay, Quebec City, all 17s with some cloud and some rain, 22 up in North Bay, 26 in Ottawa, 29 in Toronto, cloud down south there, Big Trout Lake, cloud and 6, Kapuskasing 16 with some rain, Churchill is a mix of sun and cloud and 1, God's Lake 7, same with Norway House. Gimley's in at 14 with some rain, 13 rain in Winnipeg, Brandon's 13 but sunny. 9 in Swift Current and Regina with some rain and some cloud, 14 in Estevan and 7 in Saskatoon with rain. Uranium City, some snow, and 3, Stony Rapids 2 and a mix of rain or snow, Buffalo Narrows and La Ronge both 5 with a mix of sun and cloud.
Welcome back. For decades, hydro development has wreaked havoc on Northern Cree communities, culturally, socially, and economically. But community members are speaking out. They share how the developments have affected the environment. Ashley Branson has the story.
This was land. This is land. A lot of it is gone.
Nearly 200 kilometers away from Gillam, we arrive at Tatasqueyak Cree Nation. We meet Douglas Kitchikisik. He's one of the community members that's volunteered to take us out in boats. It's hard not to notice how murky the water is. Kitchikisik says the fluctuating water levels controlled by Manitoba Hydro continue to erode the shorelines.
We found other remains going down to the water, and after we marked them GPS, and then we continue a little further up the shore, that's when we found that skull. We knew what it was right away. So these remains were found right on the shore.
This summer he found human remains by his cabin, and it wasn't the first time. He says the bones of his ancestors continue to wash up along the shorelines.
He went paddling out. Couldn't reach the ground. He fell overboard. He couldn't reach the ground.
A few years ago, Kitchikisik's cousin fell through the ice and died. He says the water and ice are no longer predictable.
He was still alive when he got here, when you pulled him out of the water. He died of hypothermia here. Yeah. So that caused through the high water going up and down. I don't know, he could have probably made it if the water was low. Could have walked to that other island. Because it was only a few yards from them. But that cold got him, ice.
This was probably one of the first times I think that I'd seen clear water. So my mom grew up in pre-CRD, so I was born into this post-CRD Churchill River diversion.
Ramona Nekaway is visiting Cree communities with Winiskatan, an alliance of university researchers, non-governmental organizations, and community members. They're speaking out on the devastation hydro development has created in the region. She's from Nisatchewayasik Cree Nation, but sees how half a century of hydro dams has impacted most communities in northern Manitoba.
You know, at that point, at the way we're going, that would even concern me, because attached to this water is a way of life. And so if our children are unable to practice that way of life, that sort of coincides with the environment and the water.
Nekaway brings the group to Troy Lake. This lake is one of the few accessible, clear and pristine bodies of water in the Treaty 5 territory that has not been sacrificed for power, and what the water looked like before the Churchill River diversion.
And I thought it was important just to give folks an idea of what they have been and will probably continue to hear about in terms of the beauty of the land and of the water and how clear and pristine it was.
Just over 350 kilometers away, in Opipanapuin Cree Nation at South Indian Lake, things are no better. In the 1960s, families were forced out of their homes to make way for the flooding.
They were given a couple $100, I forget how much, but it wasn't very much, to burn their house and move across. Quite a few of them didn't. Some instances, the RCMP had to come and take the people out because they didn't want to move.
According to the Northern Flood Agreement, it states, Manitoba shall have regard to minimizing the destruction of wildlife by controlling the water levels and flows to the extent that's practical to do so. But when you look at the land and water, it looks like maximum destruction. Steve Ducharme is a fisherman in the area. He doesn't hold back when describing the impacts hydro development has on his community.
The Manitoba government and Manitoba Hydro have succeeded what the church and the federal government have been unable to do for the last 500 years. You know, it is the total economic, cultural, and social genocide of a people. That's what happened. Literally what happened, because their culture is gone, their way of, they can't live off the land anymore because it's been totally destroyed.
Ducharme adds,
kids have no place to play. They're stuck in that town, get into trouble, all kinds of mischief and that. And the adults, well, there's no work, fishing has been almost wiped out. So there's really nothing left. And prior to the flood, it was a self-supporting community. They didn't want any help from the government. They didn't get any help from the government.
Ashley Branson, APTN National News, Opipanapuin Cree Nation.
In the final part of our series, we'll join Ramona Nekaway as she visits her family's camp and a sacred site that Manitoba Hydro simply moved to make way for development. We need to take another quick break, but when we come back, a first of its kind Indigenous Atlas.
But first, here's the rest of tomorrow's weather forecast. To northern Alberta, We've got 8 in High Level with lots of sunshine, Fort Chip, lots of sun and 6, and Fort McMurray, lots of sun and 7. Some rain and snow in Edmonton and 5, 6 rain in Calgary. 17 in Vancouver and Penticton, 14 in Campbell River and Tofino, lots of cloud down there. 14 in sun in Dease Lake, Smithers, 13 mix of sun and cloud, lots of sun in Sandspit and 17. 11 in Dawson City and Mayo with sunshine. 13 in Beaver Creek and Whitehorse, sunshiny there too. Norman Wells, 9. Wrigley, 8. Fort Simpson, 8. Lots of sun there. Tuck, sun and 7. Sax Harbor, -2. Paulatuck, 0. Cambridge Bay, -3. Baker Lake, -1. Chesterfield is +1. Some rain in those places. Resolute's -6 with some rain. Arctic Bay, 0. Mix of sun and cloud. Cape Dorset, lots of sun and 0. And Iqaluit, rain and 1. Welcome back. A new book is out today telling the story of the country's 3 Indigenous groups in their own words. The Indigenous Peoples Atlas of Canada is a 4-volume hardcover set published by the Royal Canadian Geographic Society. Former APTN video journalist Ozzie Michelin served as Inuit editor, and he popped by APTN earlier to explain how this atlas is one of a kind. That's us. Googling Indigenous Canada won't get you results like this.
First of all, it is beautiful. It is such an amazing book. It looks great. It's something to really be proud of. It's something you can keep on your bookshelf and really kind of show off to people. So, you know, there's something really to be said about a tangible book that you can look through and look at the pages and touch it. And it's a different experience. And one of the other neat things about this, too, is that there's no provincial or territorial boundaries on it. It's all the different nations and homelands showing out where they really are, and it's only described in the languages that they use to describe it, what it's actually called. So, you know, it's kind of a first of its kind this way. It's a very, like, non-colonial atlas.
The project was funded by the federal government and put together by the Royal Canadian Geographic Society, but Indigenous groups determined the contents of their own volumes.
The Inuit Tapakanatami, the Assembly of First Nations, and the Métis National Council to really make sure that all the input was coming from Indigenous people, and this was really Indigenous-led. And like I said, it's like the first of its kind. Where you're from, what is that land called? It's right there. You can see it, you can touch it. So it's really meant to be an educational thing, but it's also, like as you said, it's beautiful, and that's part of the pride in it as well, is that it's really showing off our culture, our art, our crafts, all kinds of things. It's all right there.
I asked what his favorite thing is in the set.
So obviously my favorite part is my home. As you can see, this is Labrador. You don't see any provincial territorial boundaries on here. You just see this is Nunatsiavut. This right here is Nitassinan. This is the Inuk homeland. And over here you have Nunatuavut. So yeah, this is my home, and I've never really seen the map of my home really portrayed this way, you know?
While it's designed with educators in mind, the Indigenous Atlas of Canada is available through your favorite local bookstore or online through Amazon. Melissa Ridgen, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
They are super cool atlases, so if you're looking to give me a Christmas present,
right.
Then
there might be one sitting on my desk. Those are available in stores now, and for about $100 for the 4-box or the 4-piece set.
Well worth it. That is your APTN National News for this Thursday.
For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Melissa Ridgen.
And I'm Dennis Ward. Have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.